My name is Torsten Overgaard. I'm a Danish photographer. I travel the world taking photographs and teaching photography. Today I'll try and help you to find the right camera for you. Maybe you just got the idea you want to photograph, upgrade from your iPhone, or maybe you have an idea that this is something you used to do in a past life, but you forgot most of it, and now you want to get into it again. So I will help you with that today. I'll narrow it down to just 5 points that is important for you to be good at photography, to grab the subject. And when you're done with this video, I promise you that you would be able to pick a camera. If you should have a nice pink one like this, a small sexy one like this, or a very expensive one like this, or maybe just have your iPhone. But let's start with it. The first point is that photography, the word photography means painting with light, and that is what photography is about. It's about light. That's what you capture with a camera, and light is for the photographer what paint is for the painter. And that is actually very simple. And you have light all over, and you can see here I have daylight coming in. On my face I have some artificial light here, and you can see how the color change here, and how it's actually overexposed on the hand now because there's much light coming here. If I move the hand over here, you see that the hand is actually darker than the white background. And if I walked over to the background, then it would be different. So this is what you do with light. And actually what you do is that you can see you're not photographing the light, you're photographing the reflections of light. So the reflections of this light source and this light source on the hand, that's what make things look like they do. And that is what you use a camera to capture. And in many ways you could say you actually don't need a camera to be a good photographer, because you can walk around and you can look at things, you can see, wow, it looks beautiful today. Or you can look at a bicycle, or you can look at a house, or you can look at the ocean, and you can see that the light looks particularly beautiful that day. And of course, if you walk in the woods or somewhere and you have like light rays coming through the leaves, it looks very aesthetic, it looks like a painting. And in a way it is. And I tell people in my book, Magic of Light, I say you don't actually have to have a camera. You can walk around and you can notice when you see a good picture. And next step would be that you take a camera and then you capture that photo. So everything is about light. That's the fundamental thing you have to know if you want to take photos, no matter if you want to use an iPhone or you want to use no camera, you want to be a painter, or you want to have an expensive fancy camera. It's all about light. And that's also why it shouldn't surprise that if you take a camera like this is actually a modern digital camera. It has a screen here. This is a modern digital Leica camera, and it's called a rangefinder because you look through a rangefinder here that measures the distance when you turn the focus ring, so it's manual focus. So that makes it a little bit special. It makes a camera that makes you slow down and think about your photography. It also puts you very much in control because this camera doesn't really have any automatic thing. It doesn't suddenly focus at the background or the foreground or something else, or suddenly take the picture by itself. Everything is very manually. But what I wanted to show you on this camera is that you have what all cameras have, no matter if they have 600 features or they only have 3, they always have these 3, and that's the control of light. And one of them is here, you have the shutter speed up here. On this camera you can set the shutter speed manually. And here, for example, I can set it to 1/125th of a second. That's a very normal shutter speed. And then when I take the photo here, if there was more battery in this camera, let's take the other one then. I can take, this is the same camera. This is a black and white camera, this is a color camera. And this is a Leica M10P. And if I go here 1/25th of a second, then you can hear it just takes a photo here. And I can actually show you what happens. Shutter speed is simply just that there's in front of the sensor in here, there's actually a curtain, so there's no light coming through. And as soon as I press the shutter, the curtain goes up shortly. So that's a shutter speed, and it's a metal curtain, and it is like a curtain in your house or your apartment, that if you want to sleep at night, you put the curtains in front so you don't get woken up by the light when the sun comes up. Here is just a curtain that goes away from the sensor for a very brief moment, like 1/125th of a second. And if then you change the shutter speed to 250, then suddenly you only get half the light. And you change it to 1/60th, you get twice as much light, and so on. And typically a shutter can go from actually several seconds, but you can say if you want to hold a camera and you don't have motion blur, you should be at 190 or 125th of a second as the slowest speed. Even you can go 130 and so on, then you should put it on a tripod or hold it very still. And then usually on a camera like this, you can go to 1/4000 of a second. So that's 1 second divided with 4,000. So that's quite fast. But even then you can get shutters that goes to 1/8000 of a second. And today you can get digital shutters in most even small cameras. It's not a fancy thing, but you get digital shutters. So it's kind of like you turn the sensor on and off. So you don't have to have the curtain, you just turn it on and off. That's called a digital shutter. And those can go to like 16,000 of a second, 20,000 and even higher. So that's one way to control how much light hits the sensor. And then you're like, why is that important? Well, that is important because a sensor have a light sensitivity. And film that we used in the old days also had a light sensitivity, which when it was filmed, it was a chemical thing. It was like, how do you mix the chemicals? How sensitive are they to light? And you can compare it to skin. If you have kids, then if you have a kid with brown eyes, they can be out in the sun all day. If you have a kid with blue eyes and red hair, they're going to be burned after 20 minutes in the sun. So that is sensitivity to light. It's actually not to heat, it's to light. And sensors have the same. And that's why you have to adjust. You can say the sensor always have the same sensitivity to light. So if you have a lot of sunlight or just a lot of light, you have to make sure that the sensor just gets very short exposure of light or very little exposure of light. If it's very dark, then it needs longer time to suck in the light. And that is sensitivity. And that's the whole point. You could say that's the only actual thing you have to learn in photography is how to get the exposure right. And you can say there's only one exposure, and that is when, for example, my skin color looks right, or the table looks right here, then the exposure is correct. There's no other alternative exposure. There's just one right, and that is when it looks natural, like what you see with your eyes. And then so you can say you have to control that. Then of course you can go from there and you can say, no, I actually like things a little bit darker, or I like them brighter, or I like the colors a little bit weird. That's good. That's artistic things you can add to it. But the first thing is you have to have the ability, the knowledge, and the cameras, you can actually get the exposure right. And that's all the point with a camera. The camera is basically just a dark box where there's no light coming in till you press the shutter, then light comes in. So this is the shutter speed. You could say that is the main control in my view. I have picked a camera. I always use Leica, so I have a camera where I can actually, it does stay here on aperture priority, which is almost automatic. So when I take a photo, the camera will suggest a shutter speed, and if I'm happy with that, I can just take the photo. And if the camera says, for example, 250 of a second, and I think, no, that's a little bit too dark, then I can actually just change this one and say, okay, I'm going to go 1/80th of a second, which is 50% more light, or I can go 1/25th of a second, that's 100% more light, then I get a brighter picture. So I can control this, and I like to control light with the shutter speed mainly as the main control, because if I do a portrait, or most photos I do, it doesn't change the look of the photo if I do, no matter what shutter speed I do. You can't tell in a portrait if it was taken at 1/4000 of a second or 125th of a second. It's only if it's blurred that you can see, oh, it's probably taken at 1/15th of a second or 1/30th of a second. So shutter speed is my main control. And in any camera I would look for a camera where can I control the shutter speed easily from outside. And also look at controlling the whole camera, but we get to that. So shutter speed is the first, and in my opinion, main control of light. Then you have the next thing is that you have the lens here. Yeah, it has focus, but it also have an aperture ring. An aperture, the word simply means hole through. And what you have here is, maybe you can see it here when I turn it, then there's less and less, there's a smaller and smaller hole through a lens. And just like you could say shutter speed is actually divided in like 4,000 of a second, 2,000 of a second, and so on. So every time it halves the light or it doubles the light. The same way with the aperture ring. So even they have weird names here, 1.4, 2.0, 2.8. This is every time you go one stop, as it's called, you reduce the light to half, and you go the other way, you double the light. So it's all halving, doubling. So that means you can double here and half here, and you get the same light, but you get different effects. The reason that the aperture is not the main control for me is that I like to shoot my lenses wide open. So I shoot at 1.4, and then I get this narrow depth of field that you don't really get on an iPhone or a small camera, but you get it on what is called full frame cameras, 35mm cameras. You get this narrow depth of field that you take a photo of a person and the background is blurred, and that is when you have a wide open aperture, and that means you have a lot of light coming through the lens. The more you stop down here, you get less light, but you also get more depth of field. So suddenly, you could say if you take a photo, it looks good at 1.4, but it's too bright, so you stop it down. Now you have a portrait where you can see the background, you can see the blue car in the background, and some posters and text that you don't want to see in the background. So I usually stay at wide open with my lenses, and that allows me to also to predict how's the photo going to look, because I know when I shoot at 1.4 or something like that, then this is what's going to be in focus, and this thing that far away is going to be this blurred, and this thing way down there is going to be totally gone in the photo. So I can predict that, and I can direct your attention in my photo to what I want you to look at, because your eye is going to go to what is bright or very dark and what is in focus. You're not going to start looking at something in the background that's totally blurred. You're going to look at the eyes or the car or whatever is in focus. So that is the aperture, and you would say the aperture used to be in cameras like 20, 30, 40 years ago, you would have what is called aperture priority. So most cameras, you would just set the exposure by turning the aperture, and then inside the viewfinder you would have like an arrow going, and it has to be here to be correctly exposed. So you would turn the aperture till it was in the right place, and then you took the photo. But it also meant that you would change the depth of field and the whole, you could say, artistic look of the photo. But that was kind of like the way camera producers thought, this is how we're going to make people able to correctly expose you. Later on we got automatic exposure, so now the camera does all of this for you. It's not something you want, but that's kind of how you do it. But when things were very manual, you would turn the aperture and you had aperture priority. A camera like this, you do have aperture priority, but you start with 1.4, and then the camera is going to suggest a shutter speed and not, because it can't actually change the aperture for you. So it's just going to suggest a shutter speed, and that means you can stay wide open. That was the two controls of light, and then you have only one more, and that is how sensitive is the sensor. So I told you a bit ago that the sensor always have the same light sensitivity, and that is true. A sensor like this has what is called a base ISO of 160 ISO. But then what you can do is you can go in on a camera like this, you can go into the menu on this one and change the ISO, but you can actually also on this one you can change it up here. That's very fancy and kind of old school. So I can go here 100 ISO, 200 ISO, 400, 800, and even if this is a mechanical dial, is actually the same as if I did in the menu here. And what it does is that if I go to, for example, 3200 ISO, then I can easily take photos in the evening, indoor, and in the street at night. What it does is a algorithm that the sensor can only see 160 ISO of light. That's how sensitive it is. But with an algorithm, you simply just, you could say it's almost like it is a computer algorithm that you tell the sensor that, okay, now you can actually see in the dark because we just 16 doubled your ability to see. And those algorithms is why sometimes you have cameras, not so much today as for like 10 years ago, but you have cameras where you turn up the ISO, then you get a lot of noise and the colors looks weird, and sometimes you get stripes. That is simply just the computer algorithms that have gotten better than they were like 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, maybe you could go 400 ISO or 800 ISO and you could get away with it. Today, 6400 ISO and even much higher, you can get away with, and the color is going to look right, and that is simply just the computer algorithms. It's not the lenses or anything, it's simply just a way to compute that if you take this photo with this sensor in this dark, then if you pretend that there's 16 times or 25 times more light, then this red color is going to look like this and the blue is going to look like this. And if it looks right, it's high quality, and that's all it does. As technology moves on, then it's not really a big issue if you go 200 ISO or 800 ISO or even 3200. But if you can mainly stay at the base ISO of the camera, this one is 160 ISO, so I can go 200 ISO here. That would be inferior, but also in practical matters, this would be the best quality of image quality I can get, because I don't have any alteration of what the sensor sees. If I go to 800 or 1600, most likely you won't really be able to tell, but you can say it's a good rule if you want to have the highest quality of colors and tonality, then you try to stay at the base ISO of the camera. And you can look up online, any camera you have, you can look up what is the base ISO of my sensor, and that's how it's done. So that is what a camera is. It's a dark box that holds a light sensitive sensor. In the old days it held a light sensitive film that was made with chemistry on plastic, but it's a dark box, and the moment you press the shutter, it takes a photo. And the moment you take this, the shutter goes up for this amount of time, and this much light come in here depending on how much light you let through the lens, and then it hits the sensor where you set the sensitivity of the sensor. So those three elements together is what gives you the correct exposure of a photograph. And that is the important thing to know, that no matter what camera you have to pick, you have to have a camera where you have these three controls, and you should be able to control them. You cannot have a camera that changes the aperture, the ISO, the shutter speed, because you want to be able to control that. You want to mainly be able to control the aperture. ISO doesn't really matter, but you want to be able to maintain that visual look. And if you think it's too bright or too dark, you want to be able to correct it really quick, and that would be shutter speed. A lot of cameras have a wheel here, so then you can change the aperture, you can change the this and that on the camera, but that's not really how it's done. The real way to do it is that you have aperture clicks here and you have shutter speed clicks here. It's not like a wheel that just changes, because what changes when you turn the wheel, most people don't know if they change the aperture or the ISO or the shutter speed, and that is important that you stay in control. So we're getting into something, it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's not. It's only three things. So we're getting into something that becomes more and more simple. Second point, as you can tell, I could talk about this forever, so it's great I only have 5 points so we can actually get done with this within a reasonable time. The second thing I just want to point out is more about light, because the quality of light, actually the best light quality you can get is daylight. It has something to do with that the colors in daylight is, you could say, the highest quality is what your eyes used to see. As soon as you get into artificial light, you get into trouble, especially with LED light and all kinds of low energy light these days. So if you want to have something that looks bright and beautiful, you go with daylight. And you could say color is a part of the aesthetic. So correct colors, when you photograph something, even as a brick wall or a face or a dress or a car, when the colors looks right, that is an aesthetic in itself. The great thing about daylight is that it's all over the place and it's free, and there's actually a lot of it. If you wanted to create daylight with artificial light, you need a lot of lamps, and that's what they do in film sets. So they drive out truckloads of lamps and silk screens and what have you to make it look like daylight. So that is the ideal, and that's the thing also, that if you go around just without a camera, you just look at things, you go out in the morning, you see, wow, it's really beautiful, the light. The same late in the afternoon, it's low light, it's beautiful. Just after the sun goes down, you see colors actually very bright, even it gets darker and darker. And you can have mid of the day, you can admire that the sun goes through the leaves, or it reflects or especially indoors in the middle of the day where you have the sun coming straight down in most places and it's very harsh light, then you actually have light coming in from the windows and it gives some interesting reflections. And if you just look at this space here, I mean, one of the things I mentioned before is that what you photograph is reflections of light. And you look here, yeah, this is white paint, and there's a lot of white paint and white everything here, but you can see they have different tones. So if you imagine you look at this in black and white is interesting because you just deal with one color, you just deal with light, so you don't have to take colors and everything into consideration, and you just see the tonality. But actually the tonality is how much light does this surface reflect. And you could say, yeah, it's white paint and it's white everything, but because of the light, then some of it is brighter than others, and things in shade is darker, and sometimes you have so much shade that it's like 90% or 100% black. And as you move around a car or around a building or something, you will see that the reflection changes. So the whole look of that thing changes. And that is, you could say, in essence, that's not something the camera can do, that's what you are doing. You are changing the viewpoint and see, this is, if I look at it from here, this is beautiful. Of course there's framing and focus and everything, but the main thing is the light. If you have beautiful light, you can make anything. Historically, if we look at how do they make movies, then movies have always had two types of light they use, and one is daylight. It's called like a Kelvin temperature, 5400. That is the daylight temperature. So colors actually have light. You can see that the light here I have on my face is kind of the correct colors because it's daylight. Right now it's 6100 Kelvin because it's an overcast day here in Denmark. This light here, I actually haven't measured it, but normally tungsten light like this would be 3200. This is actually a low energy light saving bulb. So it's not even 3200. But if you go back to in the film days, when they do movies, they would have either tungsten, which is 3200, that's all artificial lamps with light bulbs. And then they had daylight. That was like either you did this or you did that. Because that's something you can control the colors of. And it sounds weird, but it's actually true that if you take a traditional light bulb, 3200 Kelvin, you can actually reproduce that as very beautiful light. What happens when we get into today with LED light and lights, low energy light bulbs and all this stuff, then you get into something where you can't really predict the color quality and also the Kelvin. So the Kelvin can be 2100 or 4300, and you can't really control it. Also sometimes they blink, so sometimes you take a photo and you will see that you take 3 photos in a series, and on one photo there's light on the whole face, and the next one there's shade on this side, and the next one there's shade on this side, and that is the light blinking. That the eye doesn't see it, but because you take photos with this fast shutter speed, suddenly you see it. So a lot of reasons to go with daylight. So you could say if you want to take photos of your kids inside, you just use the windows and you turn off all the light inside, and you're going to have beautiful colors. You can also just go black and white, and you don't have to worry about what color temperature it is or the quality of the colors. But in any ways, light is the thing, and it's your ability to see beautiful light that makes you an artist and make you a photographer and make you able to take a photo of anything, a car or a bicycle or anything that is not very sexy or anything, but you can make it look amazing because you can capture the moment where there's great light on it. And then we're coming back into the camera is that you need a camera where you can actually control the light, because if you can see beautiful light but you can't capture it with a camera, then what is it worth? Because you cannot take a photo of it. You just saw it, but you can't get it on the camera, and that's why you want to have a camera where you can control the light. You could say that's one of the things that there's many great things about the iPhone, but controlling the light and aperture or anything is not one of them. It's great that it's simple and you can have it with you all the time. Nothing wrong with that. But when you get into that, you want to make real photographs and you want to have to precise as your vision, then you need a camera. So before I get into what camera and lens to pick, because that's the answer you want, let's just talk about what to photograph. And that is an interesting question, because that is what justifies to get a camera, is that what is it that I'm going to take photos of that is worth for me to buy an expensive camera or a new camera, or even have a camera. And usually people have this idea that they try to figure out, well, when I talk to people, I ask, what kind of photograph do you do, if they don't know me and I don't know what I take? And I say people and atmosphere. And that's a completely bullshit description, but it satisfies the question. What it means is that I travel around the world, and when I see some beautiful light, I take photos of it, and I like to have people in it. I also like to take pictures of people, not looking funny or doing something weird or looking stupid, but just, you could say, the soul of people. So in a way, you could, if we get very philosophical about it, then I like life sources. I like the life source of people. I like the life-giving source of the sun in all types, but I like when it has the moment of aesthetics. That's basically what I look for, but I can't explain that. So when people ask what type of photograph, I say people and atmosphere, and then they nod and look up in the ceiling, and then they don't ask about it anymore. But you don't actually have to have a category. If you go to many professional photographers or commercial photographers websites or fashion photographs, you will see they have like celebrities and fashion and portraits and this and architecture or whatever they have. And sometimes they have a category called personal. And if you go to the personal category, that's actually really interesting for us, because that's the ones, if they didn't have to make money off photography, that's the photo they would take. I presume that you want a camera because you want to take the photos that you somehow feel that is important for you to take. So you can skip all the categories and listen to this, because if you just pick a camera that you can carry around with you, and you just take a photo when you feel like taking a photo, when you see something, wow, that's cool, I'm going to take a photo of it. Then as you keep doing that, you're going to start recognizing which of your photos that you like. And that's going to give you, you could say, the ability or the confidence that when you see something you want to take a photo of, you know this is a photo and I'm going to take it. It might take a little while, but that is your style. Your style is the look of your photos. It's not a category of if it's cats or dogs or trees or cars or whatever. It is whatever it is that triggers you, that you see this is a photo I want to take, that's your style. And it might not have a name, it's just your style, but it's something that other people will recognize, that they will see throughout your photos, that this is very you. And that's basically how simple it is. So we go back, okay, you have to pick a camera, and let's not talk about technical things yet, because you need a camera you can actually carry with you. This is the camera I always have with me. So if I go to the supermarket, I go have a coffee, I go travel, I go on an airplane, I always have a camera with me. So I have this one, and it's just hanging over the shoulder here, so it hangs by the hip. And I always know it's there, it's not too heavy for me, but I can feel it's there and it's ready when I want to take a photo. And I know how the camera works, so I don't have to think about it. I see the photo, I take the camera, and I take the photo. That's how easy it is. You might be in a place in your life where you used an iPhone or something, or another camera, an old camera, and now you want to get into it again because maybe you got kids, or maybe you started traveling, or some reason just you feel like now I should get a real camera. And it's very tempting to go into a camera store and then you want like the best camera you can get, so you want a big one, a professional camera, and you want several lenses and zoom lenses so you can do everything. But that's not actually what you want. What you want is something you can have with you, so when you go around, you see something, you can take a photo of it. The problem with a big professional camera or a very ambitious camera is you're not going to carry it around with you. It's going to be something you do on Sundays, and if you have kids and stuff, other stuff you have to carry, you're going to leave the camera home and use your iPhone. So don't go into the trap to get too ambitious. The most important thing is a camera. The most important feature of any camera is that you can carry it with you, that you have it with you. So when you see something, you can take a photo. If you see something, you can take a photo. It doesn't help to have a camera at home in the closet, no matter how great it is. So portability, that you can carry a camera with you is really important. Of course, you can also have a camera in a bag. You could say there's a camera like this. It's a nice small Leica, And this one, it looks very cute. You turn it on, you get a lens like this. So that makes it less cute, but it's still, you could say it's a high quality camera. And you can take a lot of different photos because you can zoom, have wide, and you can go tailless, so you can take something out on the ocean or something. This is also a camera you can actually carry around across the shoulder, and you have it with you. And it's not in the way, and even if it gets hit by something when you sit down, it doesn't matter, I can still stand it. The moment you take a camera like this, you put on a lens cap, you put it in a bag, it becomes a problem when you want to take a picture. Then you have to take the camera out, you have to turn it on, take off the lens cap, and remember what was my settings. Ideally, you have a camera across the shoulders, you know what the settings are, so all you have to do is take it up, set the shutter speed, take the photo, or maybe just take it up, take the photo. You don't have to check if the ISO is high or low. You know that it's going to work for that environment you're in. That's how I work. So most importantly in picking a camera is that it's a camera you can carry with you and a camera you can be familiar with. And you could say that it's very easy to pick a camera. You go into a camera store, and it's something I keep telling people, that they send me emails, ask should I get this or that, and they quote the prices and secondhand prices, and then I can do this with this. It's very like blah blah, and you try to be practical about it. Maybe you don't get a camera, you can do the moon and birds and landscape and portrait and everything with the same camera. But then you think, okay, what do I usually take photos of? And you pick a camera based on that. And then you can forget about all the reviews and all the technological things, because you go into a camera store and you maybe have 5 or 6 cameras in front of you. And the one that appeals the most to you, that's your camera. It's the one that you like the best. It's like picking, you could say like a handbag or something. You don't pick, if you're a woman, you don't pick a handbag from which one is the most practical. You pick it for the one that you like the best, that looks the coolest. Then later you'll find out if it fits your finger. It doesn't, if it's too big. There's actually no handbag for women that's too big or too heavy. So that's the same way you pick a camera. It's like picking like a kitty. You go and look at small baby kitties, and somehow one of them stand out. Even they look the same, all 9 or 11 of them, one of them stand out, and that's your kitten. The same with a camera. That's how you pick a camera. And sometimes, and the reason I say that is because sometimes you want to pick a camera that you know that some reviewers or some people wiser than you or know more about cameras or technical, they would laugh at you. Doesn't matter. If you want a camera that is red or blue or silver and it just doesn't make any sense, but that's the one you want, you go with that one because that's the one you're going to carry with you, and that's the one you're going to feel an affinity for, and you're going to learn how to use it. And that means you're going to take photos, and ideally you're going to have a camera where you actually don't feel the camera. You see the photo and you take the photo. It's not a technical thing that you look at the camera screen or you're in the camera, you're in the subject, and that's what you're taking a photo of. Point number 4 is the camera. How do you pick the camera? So I basically told most of it, but let me just say it again. Pick a simple camera that you will carry with you all the time. And by simple camera, I mean a camera that have very few buttons and something that you think you can that can make sense. And next time you pick up the camera, you can remember which buttons to press and which features. You can get cameras that has literally 850 different selections you can make in the menu. But the problem is, you pick up that camera, even if you actually use it twice a week, you pick it up and you stumble into things in the menu, you cannot remember what it is. Sometimes the camera reset for some reason, or you do a firmware update and now you have to set everything again, and you can't actually remember how did I used to have it, or even what does that thing mean, because they just pack it with all kinds of stuff. And the irony is that the more small and consumer cameras get, the more complicated they get. So they add more stuff in an attempt to get you to buy it because you think I get a lot for the money, but also to help you take photos. But you actually don't need help to take photos. You can perfectly see that's a photo, and you can learn a camera that this exposure looks too bright. I'm going to change it a little bit darker, and I take the photo again, and there it is. You don't need 850 features to do that for you. So don't make it complicated, make it simple. The more simple it is, the more true it is. That's how it is with everything, and that's also how it is with cameras. It's not that it's necessarily easy to find a simple camera, but if that is your aim, if that's your goal to find a simple camera, of course, then you are on the right direction. 5, here's something that will make picking a camera simple, and that is that ideally you pick a prime lens. Prime means the best, but in cameras it means this is a prime lens, it's a 50mm lens. So that's all it does. It doesn't have a zoom. So you have prime lenses here, it's only 50mm or 35mm or something. And then you have something here. This is not a prime lens, this is a zoom lens. So here I can zoom in and out, and you can see here. So, and now I go tele, and then I go this 75mm, I can go back to 24, and you can actually get even small cameras. You can get, this is like a Delux 7. You can get a Leica Celux that goes from 400mm down to 28mm. That's crazy. You could say it's great if you want to take photos on the ocean or horses far away, and you also want to do interiors with 28mm. You can do all that with that camera. The problem with having a zoom is that generally speaking, in most cameras, when you pick a zoom, you kind of get an okay quality across the spectrum. When you pick a prime, it's a lens that is designed to just perform perfectly at just that 50mm or 35 or 28 or 400mm. You can get zoom lenses today that's actually really good in the whole spectrum. There's not a lot of them, and they're usually expensive. Leica used to make some of them. But that's not really the point. The point is when you have a zoom lens that, for example, goes from 28 to 75mm or from 28 to 400, then when you walk around with your camera, what are you going to look for? You can take 400mm photos, so you have to look for birds. You can also take wide-angle photos, so you have to look for wide-angle photos. And you tend to, when you take up the camera, then you just stay here and you take the photo and you zoom into it. And that's not really the way to do it, because what you work with is reflections of light. So it should be able to see, oh, there's a nice photo, and I should move over to this side or get this reflection, because that's going to look beautiful. And that's not the thinking you develop with a zoom. With a zoom, you just tend to okay, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to zoom in so I can grab the photo. It's a different way of doing it, but mainly it's make you indecisive. All kinds of photos could be good for you, because you have from 28 to 400mm. Basically, you can do anything. So now you have to look for anything. The great thing then you go with a prime lens is that, for example, I always use 50mm. Mainly like 95% of the time. 95% of the time I use a 50mm lens. So I know this is my frame. And I use it wide open, so I know when I take this photo, when I focus at this, the background is going to look this blurred. If I focus over there, the background is going to look this blurred, because it changes. The closer it gets, the more blurred the background gets. So I know those things, and I know exactly how does this lens capture, how high is the contrast, how does it treat this. If I have light coming into the lens, is it going to create flare, or is it going to make it out so I can't see anything? All these things I know. So it becomes part of the way I see things, that I walk around and say, wow, that's a great photo, because I already see how I will make it with my lens. So I know my tool as well, and of course I took a lot of photos and I used it a lot, but this is something you take a simple camera and you put on a prime lens, then you're going to be able to predict the photo, and of course that's going to make you a better photographer. It's going to make you your hands shake less when you take a photo, because you know this is what I'm making. So there's not a lot of cameras with prime lenses. You could say you can get Fuji, Leica and everything else, where you can change the lenses and you can buy prime lenses, or you can get zoom lenses. And very often the camera is offered with a kit lens, which is a zoom lens, so you can do everything with this. But you don't want to do everything. You want to do, just think about it. What kind of photos do you like to take? Is it like your kids, or it's portraits, or it's buildings? What is it? That's how you pick your lens, and you pick a prime lens, and then you just go with that. And maybe later you want to have a different lens, you can do other stuff well. And you could say you put on, instead of a 50, you put on a 90mm. Now your mindset is 90. And of course you can take 50mm pictures with a 90, you just have to step back. Then it's going to look very much the same. But your mindset changes and you become good at shooting 90. Then you put back your 50. You stumble a little bit for a few minutes or hours, and then you're back into it, that this is the 50 I'm used to. And then you have picking a lens. You could say, if you want to have a narrow depth of field, which means you take a portrait, the background is blurred. Then one thing is you get as a big sensor as you can, meaning full frame, or at least not a tiny sensor, because with a tiny sensor everything is going to be in focus no matter what you do. But a full frame, certainly if you buy a 50mm 2.0 lens, or you buy a 51.4, or like this one 50.95, then the background is going to be blurred. And if that's the look you want, then you have to have what is called a light strong lens that can go 2.0, 1.4 or 0.95. Then you create that. You can also do it with tail lenses like a 92.0, you can have blurred background, but it's not a lens that you can use for, you could say, that many things. It's more a specialized lens. Most people, when they ask, they will send me an email and say, oh, I'm looking at this camera, which lens should I get? And my answer is always, you should get 35 or 50mm. So the first thing you have to find out when you pick a lens is, are you a 35 or 50mm person? So that means, do you like this frame or do you want it more wide? 35, some people like to look at 35. For me, it's too much. Like when you tilt the camera like this, when you hold it upright like this, the lines are straight. When you do like this, then the lights are going to tilt this way. And you're going to get a lot of, you could say, side and background that could be disturbing, but it could also be an effect. And maybe that's how you like to take your photos. Or you're 50, that's more like a tunnel vision. You can focus on this and frame this, and lines are more straight. That's what suits me best. But most people are actually 35 or 50. Historically, it's almost been sold 50-50. A little bit more 35mm lenses than 50. It's a little bit of a fashion thing also, what the cameras was offered with. But it is 35 or 50. Of course, you could be a 28mm person. You could also be a 75mm person. But pick one lens and don't do it from practical. Just try to think with, or try to look at, what type of photos do I like to take? What does normally appeal for me? If you have been used to an iPhone or a zoom lens, you will see that maybe most of your photos you actually took at wide angle or 50 or tail lens. That's something you can look back at your photos and you can figure out, and then that's going to give you a hint that, oh, I should get a 50mm or I should get a 28mm, because I always zoom out so I can have wide angle. So that's a way to find out. But summa summarum, simple camera with one prime lens, and you could say also when you get a prime lens you get high quality, solves that problem. And then you should be able to carry it, and you should be liking the camera to feel this is my camera, and you just carry it all the time. And when you see something that looks great, you take a photo, and literally the only thing technically that you have to worry about is how do I get the exposure right, and that's where you have the free light controls to play with. That's basically how simple it is. The rest is just training, take a lot of photos, and of course then you usually have to edit them in a computer. Different story, but if what you see is beautiful and you can capture it in the right exposure, editing in the computer is going to be easy, but else we'll talk about that another day. That's all I had to say today. I hope this was useful. I hope I saved you for a lot of money, so you don't buy too many cameras and lenses, but you buy the right one. And if you go below the video, of course, you can make comments. There's also a link to my website where you can get a free ebook. And if you join my mailing list, and you get articles about light and cameras and what have you. And that's all I had to say today. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.